بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب زدني علما.
They would do anything to make the lives of such people better or easy. But they are happy. They take pleasure in serving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sincerely. One such personality, one such hero, one such treasure, one such hidden gem was Shaykh Muhammad Uzair Shams, rahmatullahi alayhi. May Allah have mercy on his soul. What a beautiful soul he had. I had the pleasure and the honor of meeting with him in person in 2016 when I went for Hajj. And I had the pleasure and the honor and the privilege of meeting this great scholar, this great mystic, this great Abid, Zahid. And what a hospitable man he was. I will address my personal feelings about him later. I will talk more about my personal experience with him later. First, I want to get straight to his biography. Rahmatullahi alayhi. Shaykh Muhammad Uzair Shams, rahmatullahi alayhi, his ancestral home was a place called Madhubani, which is in current day province of Bihar in India. And he came from a place called Deodha, and there was a village called Bankatwa where he was from. His ancestors had lived in this particular village of Bankatwa for some time, up to seven to eight generations. They had lived in this small village of the province of Bihar in a place called Deodha. And he belonged to a very noble family of this region, well-known family. He could trace back his ancestry up to 8 generations. And his ancestors were basically farmers in this place called Bankatwa or Balkatwa. His grandfather, rahmatullah alayh, whose name was Rida'ullah Darbhangwi, who passed away in 1941, was also in this province of Madhubani or Darbhanga. This is why he was called Darbhangwi, because this was a reference to the name of the place he was from. He was a very great scholar of Islam, and even the father of the Shaykh, his name was Shamsul Haq Salafi, who passed away in 1976, rahmatullah alayh, was also a scholar. And his uncle, Maulana Ainul Haq Salafi, was also a scholar who passed away in 1982, rahmatullah alayhima. These individuals, the grandfather of Shaykh Uzair, Shaykh Muhammad Uzair, and his father and his uncle, all three were an influence on this young man. The Shaykh also had a maternal grandfather whose name was Abdurrahim Birbhumi, who passed away in 1960 CE. He was also a great scholar and a student of Sayyid Nadir Hussain al-Dehlavi, rahmatullah alayh, a great muhaddis from the city of Delhi, who came from the line of Shah Waliullah al-Dehlavi, rahmatullah alayh. I have done a lecture on this personality, a very important personality when it comes to the history of the science of hadith in the Indian subcontinent. Sayyid Nadir Hussain al-Dehlavi was a very important personality. So the maternal grandfather of Shaykh Muhammad Uzair Shams was a student of Sayyid Nadir Hussain al-Dehlavi, rahmatullah alayh. Shaykh Muhammad Uzair, his ancestral region was the province of Madhubani and the village of Balkatwa, but he wasn't born there. He was born in a place called Danga in the current day province of Murshidabad, which is in West Bengal. And the reason for this was his father was actually busy teaching in this region at the time. So the Sheikh's father had been appointed there as a teacher in Murshidabad, current day West Bengal, where the Sheikh was born. Sheikh was about a year old when his father moved to Miu in India. There's another place in India called Miu, and he became a teacher there. And this is where the Sheikh started his basic initial education. Shaykh Muhammad Uzair Shams, rahmatullah alayh, his initial education started in 1966 in Madrasa Faiz Am. The name of the madrasa was Faiz Am, and this is where he started his education. And then he completed his very basic education in this particular madrasa. The Sheikh himself tells the story of his education as a child. He states, my education in Madrasa Faiz Am in Mio started in 1966. Then I went up to grade 5, having studied up to 5 years almost in this madrasa. I went through the basic texts of Persian language. I studied the Persian language, the initial stages of the language, the fundamentals of the language, in other words. Then he moved to Darul Uloom Ahmadiyya Salafiyya Darbhanga, where he studied the first class of his higher education. He studied the Arabic language there. He started studying the Arabic language there. Then the next year, his father, he moved back to Murshidabad, and he started teaching at Madrasa Darul Hadith, Murshidabad. So the Sheikh initiated or resumed his education in Murshidabad. Then afterwards, the Sheikh moved to Jamia Salafiyya in Banaras, in the city of Banaras, the famous Jamia Salafiyya in the city of Banaras, where Sheikh was studying with teachers like Maulana Azad Rahmani. So the Sheikh's father was invited to this particular institution, and in 1969, the Sheikh started the 3rd year of his higher studies with Jamia Rahmaniya Banaras, and the 4th year was also completed there, and he got his Alamiya degree from Jamia Salafiyya Banaras. So the Sheikh got his Alamiya degree from Banaras in 1970. Then he completed another 2 years for Fadila, again from Jamia Salafiyya Banaras, and he completed his education, his basic Islamic education, you can say a bachelor's degree or equivalent of a bachelor's degree, in 1976 from Jamia Salafiyya Banaras in India. It's a very famous Ahlul Hadith institution within the Indian subcontinent, and in particular in India. Then in February 1978, Sheikh got an admission in the Islamic University of Medina. Sheikh moved to Medina, and he started his degree with the university in Kulliyatul Lughatul Arabiya. In other words, he started to learn the Arabic language. He took the Arabic language as a subject. In 1981, he completed his degree with the Islamic University of Medina, and he completed his Arabic language degree there. And then he took up a master's degree. In the Arabic language, it is called Magister. He took up or it's like MPhil. It's an equivalent of MPhil, which is a pre-PhD qualification many students have to do. So the Sheikh took up the topic of studying the poetry of an Indian poet, Muslim poet called Hali, Maulana Altaf Hussain Hali, who was an accomplished poet of the 19th century from India, and he was also a student of great poets like Mirza Ghalib. So Shaykh Muhammad Uzair Shams chose the poetry of Hali as his topic, and the reason was the poetry of Hali is very, very effective and very powerful. He was a reformer. He tried to change the condition of the Muslims. Hali was actually one of the inspirations for poets like Muhammad Iqbal, who became very famous later on. So Hali's poetry was very moral, very Islamic. So Shaykh Muhammad Uzair Shams chose Hali's poetry and he translated his Diwan or his Musaddas. His collection is called Musaddas. He translated that collection into the Arabic language and he acquired his Magister or MPhil from Makkah University or from Qura. So he finished his degree with Medina University, the Islamic University of Medina, and he finished his MPhil with Qura University in Makkah, Al-Makkatul Mu'azzama. Then he chose to do a PhD. So in 1990, the Sheikh submitted his PhD dissertation, and the topic of the dissertation was Ash-Sha'r al-Arabi fil Hind, Dirasa Naqdiyya. Basically, the Sheikh's PhD was on the Arabic poetry within the Indian subcontinent, a critical view of the Arabic poetry in the Indian continent. So in 1990, Sheikh submitted his dissertation for his supervisor to review, and his supervisor did not agree with the conclusions of the Sheikh, and that project was put aside. So the Sheikh, rahmatullah alayhi, could not get a doctorate degree. He could not get a PhD due to that reason, but he had submitted his doctorate dissertation. As far as the qualification and the level of knowledge is concerned, the Sheikh's knowledge, academically speaking, was definitely up to the PhD doctorate level, because he had done that work, he had submitted that dissertation, but he did not get the degree due to disagreements with his supervisor. Sheikh Rahmatullah alayh, this is the story he told himself in his own words of his education. This is what the Sheikh said. So he started as a child from studying with his father. Then he moved on from Madrasa Faiz-e-Aam to Jamia Salafia later on in Banaras. He finished his education from Jamia Salafia, and then he moved on to Medina University in Saudi Arabia. He finished his degree there, and after that he did an MPhil from Qura University in Mecca, and he even submitted a PhD dissertation. So the Sheikh's life was filled with knowledge and pursuit for knowledge. Allahu Akbar. So from a very young age, from the age of, let's say, childhood, when he was a child, he did not stop studying, because he grew up in an Islamic environment, in an Islamic household, where his father was a scholar, his uncle was a scholar, there were teachers in Madaris. So Sheikh inherited that environment, that culture, and that influenced him to the extent that the Sheikh was studying non-stop until he himself became a middle-aged man. So in 1990, Sheikh Rahmatullah alayh would have been in his 30s, and the Sheikh was highly qualified. The Sheikh had also studied the English language as a necessity, because he knew this is the language that is spoken by the wider world. People speak the English language, and it is an important language. That's why the Sheikh studied this language. When I personally visited his private library, which I will speak about later in more detail, I saw many, many complicated, sophisticated English books in his library, and I was surprised to see a traditional scholar of that caliber, of that magnitude, able to read the English language and such sophisticated books. I was very surprised, pleasantly surprised, because this is what we're lacking. So this is something the Sheikh had pioneered also, rahmatullahi alayh. So Sheikh Muhammad Uzair Shams, rahmatullahi alayh, had many, many scholars from the Indian subcontinent and from Saudi Arabia he studied with. So the Indian teachers of his are as follows. I give a list. Maulana Shamsul Haq Salafi, the father of the Sheikh, rahmatullah alayh. Then his uncle Maulana Ainul Haq Salafi, the uncle of the Sheikh. Then Maulana Noor Azim Nadwi, Maulana Muhammad Rais Nadwi, Maulana Muhammad Idris Azad Rahmani, Maulana Abid Hassan Rahmani, Maulana Abdul Mu'eed Banarasi, Maulana Abdul Wahid Rahmani, Maulana Abdul Salam Rahmani, Maulana Aziz Ahmad Nadwi, Maulana Quratul Ain Azami, Maulana Abdul Salam Tayyibi, Maulana Abdul Salam bin Abi Aslam Madani, Maulana Abdul Rahman Dokami, Maulana Safiur Rahman Mubarak Furi, the famous Maulana Safiur Rahman Mubarak Furi, the author of Ar-Rahiq al-Makhtoom, was also one of the teachers of Shaykh Uzair Shams. Maulana Anis al-Rahman Adami, Maulana Abdul Hannan Bastawi, Shaykh Hadi al-Talibi. This was an Arab scholar teaching at Jamia Salafia in Banaras. So the Shaykh was one of his students. Also, Master Manzoor Ahmad, Master Aftab, Master Shamsuddin. These were some of the Indian teachers, or from the Indian subcontinent, who taught the Shaykh Rahmatullah alayh. Then from Jamia Islamia, Madina al-Munawwara, his teachers there were Dr. Abdul Azim Ali al-Shanawi, Izzuddin Ali al-Sayyid, Ahmad al-Sayyid Ghali, Muhammad Qanawi Abdullah, Mahfuz Ibrahim Farj, Abdul Aziz Muhammad Fakhir, Ibrahim Muhammad Abdul Hamid Abu Sakin, Muhammad Ahmad al-Azb, Ahmad Jamal al-Umari, Saleh Ahmad Bailu, Taha Abu Karisha, Muhammad Bailu, Ahmad Abu Bakr, Abbas Mahjub, Abdul Basit Badr, Ali Nasir Faqihi, Sheikh Jibran. So these are some of the teachers who taught him at the Islamic University of Medina. Then in Al-Qura, in Makkah al-Mukarrama, Al-Makkah al-Mukarrama, the teachers of the Sheikh in Al-Qura were Dr. Hassan Muhammad Bajuda, Mahmud Hassan Zaini, Abdul Hakim Hassan, Dr. Ahmad Makki al-Ansari, Ali Muhammad al-Ammari, Abdul Aziz al-Kafrawi, Lutfi Abdul Badi, Abdul Salam Fahmi, Nu'man Amin Taha, Abdul Aziz Kishk. The Shaykh Rahmatullah alayh had many more teachers, but these are some of the main teachers he benefited from, and the number reaches about 47 persons. Allahu Akbar. Just imagine the level of knowledge this person may have had, and the amount of ilm he took with him when he parted from this world. Rahmatullah alayh. A great scholar, a great loss for this ummah. And the reason we're doing this conference is to commemorate his legacy, to highlight for the people to understand what we have lost in this person. We have lost the ilm of all these great scholars who taught him. And his ilm was so great that he produced amazing, immense works of great research and magnitude. After 1999, he returned, having lived in India for some time, to Makkah, where he started to work with some Islamic institutions, including the University of Makkah, Al-Qura, then Majma al-Malik Fahad in Medina al-Munawwara, then Islamic Fiqh Academy, Jeddah. And he lived from 1999 onwards. From 1999 onwards, he lived permanently in the city of Makkah because he loved that city dearly. Who doesn't love Makkah? Which Muslim doesn't love Makkah? But he was attached to the city of Makkah like, a child is attached to the mother. He had a lot of love for the city of Makkah, and that's why he wouldn't leave that city for anything. He was permanently based in Makkah, and he worked with research institutions like Dar Alim al-Fawaid, where he researched on the works of Shaykh al-Islam, Imam Ibn Taymiyyah, and Imam Ibn Qayyim, and Allama Muallami. These are the three scholars he pioneered while living in Makkah. He produced immense works on them, which I have seen with my own eyes. Some of those works the Shaykh gifted to myself personally out of his love and compassion for a humble student like myself. The Shaykh, while he was staying in Makkah and Medina, visited many different countries for the purpose of research, Islamic da'wah, and promotion of Islamic knowledge in general. The countries he visited were Pakistan, Egypt, Jordan, Syria, Turkey, France, Britain, Morocco, Turkmenistan, Kuwait, Bahrain, and the UAE, where he met many Islamic scholars and researchers and shared his ideas with them, presented research papers, presented his research articles in these conferences and meetings. So in other words, the Shaykh was an international personality, internationally renowned. Anyone who loves the works of Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah or Ibn Qayyim, or anyone who loves research in general in Islamic topics, and anyone who knows the scholars of Mecca, Shaykh Muhammad Uzair Shams, his name is paramount. His name is well known. So he worked on many research projects. The list is exhausting. It is very long. Even the list I have, which has been shortlisted, it has 36 works. The list I have in front of me right now that has been prepared, the works Shaykh has produced, Allahu Akbar, when you look at the amount of research, how do you know a scholar of Islam? There are many people out there today that claim to be scholars of Islam. Every Tom, Dick and Harry can attach the name Shaykh or attach the title Shaykh with their name. Okay, and the Muslim Ummah uses this title very loosely with the names of people. People like myself, such as myself, because I am a public figure, I do a lot of lectures around the world. People start calling me a Shaykh, and I know I'm not a Shaykh. I know I haven't studied even a fraction of what I am dealing with here right in front of me right now. When it comes to the biography of Shaykh Muhammad Uzair Shams, Shaykh Muhammad Uzair Shams was a Shaykh. He was a Shaykh. And if it comes to the Indian subcontinent, he was the Shaykh, a Shaykh. Rahmatullah alayhi. This is a scholar, not imposters, pretenders, people with little knowledge, with little production, with little works at their disposal or produced by them. In this day and age, the title Shaykh has become a joke. People produce pamphlets, small booklets of, let's say, 100 pages, and they start to attach the word Shaykh with their name. Muslims need to be very careful about this. When you give the title Shaykh to someone, be careful. You may be destroying someone by making them think that they are sheikhs and they are not sheikhs. Some people do realize that they are not sheikhs, and Allah has made them humble enough to understand their position in Islam, to understand, to realize how big or how small they are. Some people are blessed with that, but most are not. There are people out there, they might get big-headed just because you call them sheikh. Just because someone comes and does a small talk in your masjid and you start attaching the title Shaykh to their name. So be very careful with that, my brothers and sisters. Shaykh is a big title in Islam. It means a lot. Titles like Allama, Shaykh, Mufti, okay? These are big titles. Before you give these titles to people, get to know their qualifications, understand who they are. Have they even studied? Do they know the Arabic language in depth? Do they understand what they have been teaching? Have they produced any research? How many books have they written? Are their books acknowledged by great scholars of this day and age? Have these scholars received tazkiyah? Have they received endorsement from great scholars of our time? These are the questions you need to look at. So, my brothers and sisters, not everyone who's called a sheikh is a sheikh. Okay? You may call people ustad, teacher. Yeah, that's fine, because anyone can be a teacher. But not everyone is a sheikh in the Muslim Ummah. Shaykh Muhammad Uzair Shams rahmatullah alayhi was a sheikh. He was indeed a sheikh. Why am I saying this? Because I have seen his works. I have seen the research he has produced. I have seen the respect among scholars for him. I have seen how people who know him, you know, they take their hats off for him. Okay, this is a figure of speech, by the way. Yeah, they take the turbans off for him, in other words, right? Because they have seen the caliber, the magnitude of his work. What has he produced? Works like Raf'ul Iltabas an Ba'd an-Nas. And this is a tahqiq on one of the works of Allama Shamsul Haq Adim Abadi. This was the scholar who authored a great commentary on the Sunan of Abu Dawud titled Aun al-Ma'bud. Shaykh Shamsul Haq al-Adim Abadi was a great scholar from the Indian subcontinent. The Shaykh produced a tahqiq, a research on his work Raful Iltabas. Then he also authored a biography of the same muhaddith, same Shaykh, Hayatul Muhaddith Shamsul Haq wa A'malihi. Okay, the life of Al-Muhaddith Shamsul Haq and his actions, published in Banaras in 1979. So the first work the Shaykh produced was in 1976, even before he completed his, I think that was the year when he fully qualified. So the moment he qualifies from Jamia Salafiyya in Banaras, he produces a work on the life of Muhaddith Shamsul Haq Adim Abadi. Then Raddul Ishraq by Shah Ismail bin Abdul Ghani al-Dehlawi, one of the grandsons of Shah Waliullah al-Dehlawi, Shah Ismail Shaheed. He authored a book titled Raddul Ishraq, and Shaykh Uzair Shams published a research on that in 1983. Then in the Urdu language, Maulana Shamsul Haq Azim Abadi, Hayat or Khidmat. So he wrote a biography of Shaykh Shamsul Haq Azim Abadi in the Urdu language, published from Karachi in 1984. Then he also wrote the history of the teachers of Abul Qasim al-Baghawi. Okay, and this was published in Mumbai in 1988. Then Fatawa of Maulana Shamsul Haq Azim Abadi, the Shaykh produced a research on the Fatawa on the religious rulings of Shamsul Haq Azim Abadi in 1989, and it was published from Karachi. Now you might have seen that Shaykh was deeply inspired by Shamsul Haq, Maulana Allama Shamsul Haq Azim Abadi. There's a reason for that. Maulana Shamsul Haq Azim Abadi was also from Bihar, if I'm not mistaken, from Patna, from the province of Patna. Azim Abad is in Patna, in India. And Shaykh Muhammad Uzair Shams was also from the same province, Bihar. Okay. And Shamsul Haq Azim Abadi rahmatullah alayhi was a great scholar who produced one of the best commentaries on hadith in the history of Islam. I'm not exaggerating. Okay. Which one is the best commentary on the hadith? Let's say, which ones are the few commentaries you can mention on hadith? The first name that comes to mind is Fathul Bari by Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani. Okay. Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, that's the first name that comes to mind. Then we have the Sharh of Imam al-Nawawi on Sahih Muslim. Okay. Then we have Imam Malik, his Muwatta. We have Sharh of Zarqani, or we have At-Tamheed. Okay. And then when it comes to Tirmidhi, we have Shaykh Abdurrahman Mubarak Furi. And then when it comes to Abu Dawud, I'm talking about Sihah Sitta here. When it comes to Sunan of Abu Dawud, the best commentary, or one of the best commentaries of all times on the Sunan of Abu Dawud, was authored by Shamsul Haq, Maulana Allama Shaykh Shamsul Haq Al-Azim Abadi. Okay, and he was a student of Shaykh Hussain bin Muhsin al-Ansari al-Yamani, who was one of the students of Imam Shawkani's son. Okay, so Shaykh Hussain bin Muhsin al-Ansari al-Yamani was brought to India by Nawab Siddiq Hassan Khan, the ruler of Bhopal, to teach hadith in the Indian subcontinent. So Shaykh Hussain bin Muhsin moved from Hudaydah, which is in Yemen. He moved from Hudaydah to Bhopal in India, and he was teaching hadith. And the outcome, the result, was scholars and scholarly works of people like Shamsul Haq Azim Abadi, Al-Azim Abadi, and Maulana Abdurrahman Mubarak Furi, Shaykh Allama Abdurrahman Mubarak Furi. So clearly, Shaykh Muhammad Uzair Shams rahmatullah alayhi was deeply inspired by the works of Shaykh Shamsul Haq Azim Abadi. Then other works, غاية المقصود شرح سنن أبي داود للعظيم أبادي تحقيق بالاشتراك. So there is another work Shaykh Uzair Muhammad Uzair Shams produced on one of the commentaries of, again, Shams al-Haq Azim Abadi, and this was a joint venture. بحوث في تحقيقات للعلامة عبد العزيز الميمني. So he also produced research on the works of Allama Abdul Aziz al-Maymani, and this was published from Beirut in 1995. استدراك أم المؤمنين عائشة على الصحابة لأبي منصور al-Baghdadi. This is also a research produced by the Sheikh, published in 1996 from Mumbai. Then قاعدة في الاستحسان لابن تيمية بخطه. Okay, this is again a work of Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah in his own handwriting. The Shaykh did research on it, published in Makkah al-Mukarramah in 1999. Al-Jami'ah li-Sirat Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah. Now, this is basically the life of Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, his biography, published by the Shaykh with other scholars from Makkah, al-Makkah al-Mukarramah in 1999. Makkah al-Mukarramah. This was published. تقييد المهمل في تمييز المشكل لأبي علي الجياني تحقيق بالاشتراك. Okay, this is another work the Shaykh produced, the work of Abi Ali al-Jayani. His work was researched by the Shaykh, and this was published from Makkah al-Mukarramah in the year 2000. Jami al-Masail li Ibn Taymiyyah. Again, research on the works of Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, tahqiq, published in 2002. Wallahi, this particular work, if I'm not mistaken, it is in multiple volumes. Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah was a special topic of Shaykh Muhammad Uzair Shams. In fact, Shaykh Muhammad Uzair Shams was seen to be one of the top 10 scholars, authorities on the works of Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah. Let me repeat that so that you understand what we're dealing with here. Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah's name in the history of Islam is very important for many reasons. And I have done a biography of Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah. You can check it out on my YouTube channel. I have done a biography of Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah. To understand the importance of this person, you need to look at the amount of scholars who have worked on him. And I would say safely, from the top 10 scholars on Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah in the list, top 10 experts on Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah in the world, one of them was Shaykh Muhammad Uzair Shams. When you look at the volumes he produced on Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah and some of the daqa'iq, some of the intricacies, some of the delicate masail and issues found in the works of Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah were deciphered, explained, explored by Shaykh Muhammad Uzair Shams. Many pending questions were addressed and solved by Shaykh Muhammad Uzair Shams by studying the works of Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah. And I am talking about volumes upon volumes, multiple volumes, not one volume. This is not a small piece of research, brothers and sisters. Jami' al-Masail is in multiple volumes. Likewise, he did the same with the works of Shaykh al-Islam ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah, who was a student of Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah. So Shaykh Muhammad Uzair Shams was a specialist on the life and the works of Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah and Shaykh al-Islam ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah. If you are researching Ibn Taymiyyah and do not look at the works of Shaykh Muhammad Uzair Shams and his researches, then you haven't completed your work. Then you don't know what you're talking about. Then you actually don't know many aspects of the life and the works of Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, rahmatullah alayhim. And the list goes on. Al-Risala al-Tabukiyya li Ibn al-Qayyim, Tahqiq, again, this is a work of Shaykh al-Islam ibn al-Qayyim, published from Makkah al-Mukarramah in 2003. Likewise, one of the works of Shah Waliullah Dehlawi, Shaykh did a commentary on it. It is called Ittihaf al-Nabiyya bima yahtaj ilayhi al-Muhaddis al-Wafaqiyya by Shah Waliullah Dehlawi. Then تنبيه الرجل العاقل لابن تيمية تحقيق بالاشتراك مكة المكرمة. Then تنبيه is a work of Shaykh Islam ibn Taymiyyah. Shaykh Muhammad Uzair Shams published a research on it from Makkah al-Mukarramah in 2005. Okay. جواب الاعتراضات المصرية على الفتية الحموية لابن تيمية تحقيق. Again, this is another work of Shaykh Islam ibn Taymiyyah, and the Shaykh did a research on it and published it in 2009 from Makkah al-Mukarramah. Al-Fawaid is another book Ibn al-Qayyim. The Shaykh published research on it in 2009 from Makkah al-Mukarramah. Rawzat al-Muhibbin Ibn al-Qayyim, again a research published on a work of Ibn al-Qayyim al-Jawziyah, published in 2011 from Makkah al-Mukarramah. Ighasatul Lahfan fi Masaid al-Shaytan. Okay, this is from Ibn al-Qayyim again, and the Shaykh published research in 2012. Al-Kalam ala Mas'ala as-Sama'. This is again from Ibn al-Qayyim, published a research from Makkah al-Mukarramah in 2012. Brothers and sisters, the list is very, very long, wallahi. And if I start talking about every single one of them, A'lam al-Muqa'in an Rabbil Alameen li Ibn al-Qayyim, the Shaykh published a research on one of the greatest works of Ibn al-Qayyim al-Jawziyah, okay? And it was published in Makkah al-Mukarramah in 2017. Not a year, there's hardly a year that goes by when the Shaykh is not publishing some sort of research. Non-stop working in libraries, spending most of his life in the libraries of Makkah al-Mukarramah and elsewhere, researching manuscripts. The Shaykh was an expert on Islamic manuscripts. This is something that's not mentioned here in the list, but this is something I can tell you from my personal experience. He was an expert on Islamic manuscripts. I tested him. Who am I to test him? But I wanted to see the depth of the Shaykh's knowledge. I sent him a very difficult manuscript. I sent him the images of 2 pages of a very difficult manuscript that I could not decipher. I didn't know what it was. I sent it to the Shaykh. The Shaykh looked at it and he told me that this was a hashia on the sharh of a work titled Maybadi. Maybadi. Okay, I hope I'm pronouncing the name correctly. This was a text on mantiq, on logic, called Al-Maybadi, and the manuscript I sent to the Shaykh was a hashia, okay, a commentary on the commentary of this work. And I was shocked to realize that the Shaykh was able to decipher it straight away, immediately. His knowledge was absolutely immense when it comes to Islamic manuscripts. He recognized the handwriting of Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah like that. If a manuscript written by Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah was brought to him, he would recognize the writing and he would see the transition of that writing as well in the life of the Shaykh. So Shaykh was a treasure trove. I don't have the time to address all the aspects of his beautiful character. Okay. So, Shaykh Rahmatullah was also working with magazines around the world, publishing articles in Islamic magazines. For example, some of them were Arabic and Urdu, Rasail and Jara'id. One of them was Mujallatul Jami al-Salafiyya Banaras. It was a magazine published by Jami al-Salafiyya in Banaras, where the Shaykh himself studied. He was publishing articles in that. Al-Mujallatul Majma' al-Ilmi al-Hindi, Aligarh, he was publishing in that. Mujalla Majma' al-Lughat al-Arabiyya from Damascus, he was publishing in that. Mu'arif from Azamgarh in India, he was publishing articles in that. Burhan was published from Delhi, another mujalla or another magazine. The Shaykh was publishing articles in that. Then Jamia, also from Delhi, another magazine. The Shaykh was publishing articles in that. Tahqiqat Islami, Aligarh, Urdu. The Shaykh was publishing from that. Tarjuman was also from Delhi. The Shaykh was publishing articles in that. Muhaddis from Banaras, another magazine. The Shaykh was publishing articles in that. Waghaira, waghaira. So the list is very, very long when it comes to the contribution of the Shaykh in terms of knowledge and ilm and research and being productive. Wallahi, there are very few people in this world today who are as productive as the Shaykh was. The reason why, or one of the reasons why the Shaykh was not very well known publicly, okay, many people may be hearing about Shaykh Muhammad Uzair Shams for the first time in their lives. You know why? You know why? There are two reasons for that. Two reasons. One reason is that our own ignorance. We are ignorant of Islamic sciences. Generally speaking, the Muslims, the masses, we are ignorant of Islamic sciences and the people of those sciences. So just because we don't look into Islamic sciences, we are not very much interested in reading Islamic sciences and Islamic personalities and Islamic researches. We are not aware of the people who are producing them. That's the first reason, our own ignorance as a community, as the Ummah of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. In particular, even the school of Ahlul Hadith. There are Ahlul Hadith students who don't know the Shaykh. There are few who know the Shaykh and they met with him and they took benefit from him, but majority don't know him. The second reason the Shaykh is not known publicly on social media, he was not one of those social media out and about personality, is because he spent the most of his life, I would say 80 to 70% of his life was spent in libraries. The man didn't leave libraries. He spent his day and night in libraries. He was there studying books, producing research upon research. If you look at the list, some of the list I read in front of you today of his works, if you look at the list, there's not a year that he missed out. Okay, he started publishing from the very year he qualified from Jamia Salafia in India, Banaras, 1976. Since that year, he was so productive. Not a year went when he did not publish. I mean, I can hardly see any years missing. Hardly any years missing. Maybe 1 or 2 years missing in the middle, but hardly any year went by when he did not produce an article, a book, a research paper, or something of that sort. What a person, what a man, what a defender, a silent defender of Islam, what an unsung hero of Islam. Allahu Akbar. Wallahi, we don't have an idea. We don't have an idea as to whom we have lost. And I'm very sad that I couldn't spend more time with the Shaykh Rahmatullah alayh due to my own busy schedule in life. And inshallah, I hope that we will meet with him in Jannah. May Allah give him Jannatul Firdaus, the highest abode, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala unite us with him. What a loss for this ummah, wallahi. Before the Shaykh passed away, what was he doing? The Shaykh Rahmatullah alayh died on the 15th of October, on Saturday, 2022. About 2 weeks ago. He died about 2 weeks ago, Rahmatullah alayh, on Saturday, 2022, after Salatul Isha in Makkatul Mukarramah. What was he doing before he passed away, Rahmatullah alayh? What was he doing? What was his pastime? He was working on research papers. He was working on books. For example, he was researching ALHAQQ by Sheikh Nazir Hussain al-Dehlavi, Ta'rib wa Tahqiq. He was working on a book titled ALHAQQ, authored by Sheikh Nazir Hussain al-Dehlavi, and was writing research on it. Then Majmu'a Rasail, Allama Muhammad Hayat Sindhi, Allahu Akbar, Jama wa Tahqiq. So he was collecting the works of a great scholar from Sindh, Allama Muhammad Hayat Sindhi, who was alive in the 18th century CE. He was collecting his works and producing research on that. This is just before the Shaykh died, as we speak now, 2 weeks ago. This is what he would have been doing. Then Majmu'a Rasail, Shah Waliullah, Muhaddis al-Dehlavi, Jama' wa Tahqiq. He was collecting and researching the works of Shah Waliullah al-Dehlavi, Rahmatullah alayh. Majmu'a Rasail, Allama Shams al-Haq Azim Abadi. Again, his fascination with this personality didn't stop even until the day he died. Okay, and these are the works he was producing. Kitab al-Mawa'iz li Abi Ubaid, tahqiq, research. He was producing research on Kitab al-Mawa'iz. Fatawa wa Rasail Allama Hussain bin Muhsin al-Ansari al-Yamani, already mentioned. The Shaykh, the Muhaddis, was brought from Yemen to India by Nawaz Siddiq Hassan Khan in 1860s to teach hadith. And he was producing, Shaykh Muhammad Uzair Shams, rahmatullah alayhi, was producing research on the Fatawa and the Rasail, his articles of Allama Hussain bin Muhsin al-Ansari al-Yamani. Rasail wa Fatawa Miya Nazir Hussain al-Dehlavi. Same thing, same Fatawa of Sayyid Nazir Hussain al-Dehlavi. He was producing a research on those. And there was a lot more the Shaykh was doing. These are the pending projects the Shaykh was working on. And when I was now coming to my personal experience, because my time is up, I have to stop very soon because my hour is nearly up. I want to quickly summarize this talk by giving some of my personal views on the Shaykh and my personal interactions with him, rahmatullah alayh. I was in touch with him. Every now and then we would communicate, we would talk over the phone, over conference calls. And I have a makhtuta of Fathul Bari. I have a manuscript of Fathul Bari. And once I was on a conference call with the Shaykh rahmatullah alayh, and I am a researcher into Islamic manuscripts also. So I was of the opinion that this manuscript is from the time of Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani. This is very close to him. The manuscript is very old. It was possibly penned, transcribed by one of his students. That was my opinion. So I wanted to confirm this with the Shaykh. So I picked up the book, the manuscript, like this on screen, and I brought it close to the camera. The Shaykh looked at it like that and he said, yes. He said, yes, this is from the time of Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani. Immediately the Shaykh confirmed my feelings and my basic research. And that showed me the caliber of this man, that he just looked at the script, he looked at the wording, and he said, this is it, that's it. This is how deeply researched and deeply qualified he was in Islamic manuscripts. Allahu Akbar. When I went for Hajj in 2016, I had heard about the Shaykh, but I had no idea who he was in reality. I had heard that there is this good scholar, Ahlul Hadith scholar in Makkah al-Mukarramah who lives there, and his name is Muhammad Uzair Shams. So you must meet with him. So when I was there, I decided to meet with the Shaykh. So I called him. The Shaykh, a miskeen like me, who's not even a serious student of Islam, Shaykh drove himself. The Shaykh drove himself to come and speak with me. The Shaykh came, he picked me up, and he took me to his house in in Mecca. He took me to his house in Mecca, and we sat there. When I looked at his library, I realized, hold on a second, this is not someone ordinary. This is not an ordinary Shaykh. This is not just a Shaykh. This is the Shaykh. Allahu Akbar. And when we got talking, I could not believe the amount of knowledge this person had on the history of the Indian subcontinent, the history of Islam in the Indian subcontinent, the history of scholars on the Indian subcontinent, the political history of the Indian subcontinent, and generally the history of Islam and the history of Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah. And the discussions were not ending. The discussions were not ending. Assalamu alaikum. Can you see me? Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh.
Yeah, carry on. You can carry on for 5 minutes, no problem.
Okay, I'm just finishing.
Minute,
Ji. So I was having these conversations with the Shaykh, and I was getting blown away by his knowledge, and Allahu Akbar, and even on academic issues, because my field is history, and I studied at the University of London in London. So I had my views on history and my academic, you can say, inclinations. The Shaykh impressed me with his knowledge of academia, and the library he possessed was absolutely amazing. In fact, He had some amazing works in his library, and he had a lot of his own books in his library. And when I saw those researches and I saw his name on the spines of these big volumes, I asked the Sheikh to confirm, Sheikh, are these your books? The Sheikh, he was so humble. He was so humble. He couldn't say these are my books. He said, yeah, these, I have just contributed to them. Allahu Akbar. I was so surprised and shocked. I was so ashamed that how can this Sheikh come to pick me up and bring me here to his house to be hospital. He was so loving, so compassionate. I have hardly seen more humble people in my life. This man was a treasure of knowledge, a sea of knowledge, a sea of knowledge. And he was sitting in front of me as if he's an ordinary person, bringing tea for me, putting tea on the table for me, feeding me, taking care of me as a guest. Okay. And I was so humbled. I was so ashamed that but he was taking pleasure in that. He was seeing me as a student of Islam, and he was taking pleasure in that he is trying to be hospitable to a student of Islam. And those who met the Sheikh, those who went to his house and sat with him, recently many brothers went to see him, even from Pakistan, some brothers from youth club, they had a meeting with him. You can speak to them and ask them what the Sheikh was like. His tawadu, his compassion, his generosity, his love. Allahu Akbar. He was so loving, and he never showed off with his knowledge. He never showed off. He was a sea of knowledge. When you look at those books on the walls he produced, he was a sea of knowledge. He didn't show off. He didn't always interrupt people. When people would speak, when students would speak, he would let them speak, and then he would correct them if they were not. And his method of correction was so beautiful. I remember an incident. I read a Persian verse to him. This is a stanza from Iqbal in Persian. I read that to him. Zaman bar Sufi o Mullah Salame ke paygam Khuda guftand mara wale ta'wil shandar hayrat andakht Khuda o Jibrail o Mustafara. So I read it incorrectly. The term or the word guftand, I read it as guftanad, because this is not my language. The Persian is not my language. So I had read it incorrectly. So the Sheikh politely corrected me, to my shock, that he even knew the Persian language. He knew the Arabic language. He knew the English language. He knew the Urdu language, that was his mother tongue, but he even knew the Persian language. And he said to me, the word is not guftanad, it is guftand. So I said, Sheikh, are you sure? He said, yeah. And it was rude of me to even ask him, are you sure? But he said, yes, absolutely, it's guftand, and this is how it goes. And he read, he knew the stanza by heart, and he read it to me, that it is guftand mara, not guftanad mara. Wale ta'wil shandar hayrat dakh Khuda o Jibrail o Mustafara. So I was pleasantly amazed by the knowledge and the generosity and the compassion of the Sheikh. Wallahi, I have met very few people in my life who impressed me like the Sheikh did, with his beautiful manners, his humility, his knowledge, and the beautiful character he had. Very few people, very helpful. Even when my father went to Saudi Arabia, he accompanied him just because he knew me, and I asked him to take care of my father. He accompanied my father everywhere. He took him everywhere. He took me everywhere. He took me to his friends. He took me to libraries. He made me meet with scholars. I met scholars in Mecca because of Shaykh Muhammad Uzair Shams. He was so kind. And unfortunately, I haven't been to Saudi Arabia since 2016, and I wasn't able to see the Sheikh for that reason. Otherwise, it would be impossible for me to visit Makkatul Mukarramah and not be with the Sheikh and spend time with him. I had strong intentions to sit with him, and there was a project myself and the Sheikh discussed privately that we wanted to work on together. Unfortunately, we couldn't work on it, but inshallah, if Allah gave me life, and inshallah, if I live long enough, I will complete that project for the sake of the Sheikh, and inshallah put that sadaqah jariyah on his name. May Allah have mercy on Shaykh Muhammad Uzair Shams. We will not be able to recover from this loss. When a scholar is lifted, all his ilm goes with him to the grave, and those people who sought knowledge with him, and sat with him, learned from him, are truly fortunate. I happen to be one of those people, but my time with him was very, very short, very limited. I wish I could live longer with him, spend more time with him, and be with him, but that wasn't Allah's decree. So I ask Allah to give him the highest abode in Jannatul Firdaus, and give his family the patience, and make his children sadaqah jariyah for him. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless his entire family and his progeny. Ameen. On that note, wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Jazakumullah khairan for listening, brothers and sisters. I'm sorry if I went on for long, but these were my sentiments and some of the information I had to share on the Shaykh with him. This is my token contribution to his legacy. May Allah accept it from us. Ameen. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.